Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Can't Wait Sounds Terrible. It's a kind of sort of vacation honeymoon edition of our awesome podcast talking about news and talking about politics and Chicago and Springfield and all the things that sound terrible. And we have because there are so many terrible things, we have a backlog of Sounds Terrible. And one of the things that we have is Sounds Terrible with the awful white man edition that I recorded with Patrick just a week ago, Rachel. So we thought we would recycle Patrick sounding terrible.
Are you going to call that Patrick Sounds Terrible?
I mean that we actually thought about renaming the whole podcast Patrick Sounds Terrible. What do you think, Eleni?
Yeah. It would have unlimited content, but we love our Patrick, so that's kind of
Going to have to make it an hour instead of 30 minutes.
We'd have to have a data center just for the Patrick content. There's so many great things that are happening in Springfield and Chicago City Council, to be fair. And so we do run out of time. And so recently, one of the things that we covered was that they're tackling some big issues. I'm sure they'll get around to passing something to solve state and city finances. I'm sure public transit will be made safer. I'm sure there'll be some legislation that will help to raise standards for our education system in Illinois. But we are spending some time trying to figure out if Illinois can have an official state sandwich. I think that's important stuff. Let's tackle that first, and then we'll get to the other issues like funding our hospitals and taking care of our children and keeping our people safe.
I think that's an important topic because, sandwiches vary from different parts of the state, right? So what will constitute as to what's the best one? And who's judging this, right? Like, who's on the panel? We'd have to have kind of like a mix from different parts of the state to make sure that, obviously we're going to have several central Illinoisans that are like, horseshoes are the best sandwich. Like, oh my God, they're the best. But people in Northern Illinois, I don't think they're going to feel that way about their horseshoes. So got to make sure the panelists are accurate. Go ahead.
I think the most important question you need to answer before you can even have this conversation is a hot dog a sandwich?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, look, State Representative Rick Ryan is all over this, and he has furthered this debate. And I'm not even sure he's heard from the hot dog lobby, Rachel. So that may be a client you want to try to pick up in the closing days of session. Is a sandwich open face?
Hot dog on the phone as soon as we get off.
I will say this about Representative Ryan. He said that a horseshoe is not really a sandwich, but a quote open-faced thing. Now, sort of like the definition of it was important in previous political debates generations ago. Now it's do you need two pieces of bread on there, or can it be open-faced? And that is currently being debated in Springfield. And this was how our terrible discussion with Patrick went down. And this will really be terrible because it's a super special white man edition of Can't Wait Sounds Terrible, because Natalie is on strike and Eleni is camping out for some state fair tickets in Springfield. So it's just Patrick and I chopping things up, and let's get after it. Patrick, what the hell? So
live.
Yeah, it's as bad as this looks and sounds to people. It's going worse, I think, for Mayor Brandon Johnson in Springfield. And you wouldn't necessarily wish Springfield on anybody unless they were camping out for tickets to State Fair. So Mayor Johnson has an agenda in Springfield, but it's not going over very well. Chicago Tribune reported the other day that Illinois lawmakers are heading into the busy back half of the spring legislative session, and they are seeking to quash signature parts of Mayor Johnson's agenda, from his attempts to tax businesses based on their number of employees to his policy eliminating tipped wages. Quote, what you find from lawmakers in Illinois is not being anti-Mayor Brandon Johnson's agenda as much as we want to incentivize businesses to do business in Illinois, said one critic, Chicago Democrat State Representative Curtis Tarver, who's an assistant House Majority Leader. It's a long take in the Trib. You probably saw it while you were eating your Easter ham over the weekend, Patrick. But the mayor's chief of external affairs, Kennedy Bartley, is quoted as saying that she hoped that a phone call to specific legislators from her team isn't the thing standing in the way of them standing for working people. And this was after some criticism from lawmakers that in some cases, no one from the mayor's office was posting up at the hearings to deal with aspects of the mayor's agenda. And then she says, I am a lot less concerned with the criticisms of the process while I humbly receive them and will work to tighten that scope of the work. I am much more interested in the criticism of the substance of what it is we're fighting for. So we've got some differences of opinion, and meanwhile the mayor's agenda seems to be stuck in the mud and muck of Springfield.
That's right. Truly some remarkable on-the-record comments describing the separation of beliefs. And I think something we talked about on this podcast maybe over the summer when this idea was first floated is, everyone in Springfield is a political creature. They all might want to run for something else someday. I don't think most politicians' aspirations start and stop in the State House. And some of these policies lend themselves to negative publicity, to concerns about how businesses are perceived. And so if you're going to propose something that is a signature item that is not readily popular or selling like hotcakes, you got to put in the work to do it. And would sound like maybe some of that work could be improved, or in that chief of staff's words, the scope of work optimized.
So there was one bill where they talked about the sub-minimum wage, which has been a hot topic. The Illinois Restaurant Association doesn't want to change things. And for those of you at home who are not all geeked out about Springfield legislation like Patrick and to some extent me, this is tipping your waiter, basically, right? And the waiter generally is getting less than a minimum wage because they're getting tipped. And then when they divvy up the tips, there's supposed to be a level at which everyone's at least getting their minimum wage, but then they obviously get beyond that. In some restaurants, servers do very well. So the mayor's office has been trying to change that. And as they said, they wanted to oversee the regulation of tipped wages for workers under the One Fair Wage Ordinance. Chicago aldermen voted to repeal that in 2023. Aldermen last month voted 30-18 to freeze the ordinance's implementation, citing rampant concerns from restaurant owners that the hikes were harming their businesses. The original ordinance was among Mayor Johnson's earliest political wins after taking office in May. In Springfield, Sam Toya, president of the Illinois Restaurant Association, testified in the House committee that Representative Tarver's effort to fix this was about consistency and predictability in job creation. That bill passed through the committee overwhelmingly by 22-4. And the head of the Restaurant Association, Sam Toya, says guarantees every worker earns at least the full minimum wage while allowing tips to remain an important part of the income for servers, bartenders, and support staff. Among those testifying in opposition to the bill was the Springfield lobbyist for the city of Chicago, a former Chicago alder by the name of John Arena, who echoed Mayor Johnson's rationale by calling the sub-minimum wage, quote, a lasting vestige of slavery, which has for generations been used as a means to suppress wages while subjecting workers to higher rates of wage theft from employers and harassment by customers. So, not sure that that's the case for most of the waiters that I know. So anyway, Representative Tarver, as the Tribune noted, who is black, took exception to comparing tipped wages to slavery, a comparison that Mayor Johnson, of course, who is also black, has made in the past. And Curtis Tarver said, quote, he does not get to talk about the vestiges of slavery, because if we talk about that, we're probably talking about what position his family was in versus mine. He said that to John Arena, who is white. A lot of complicated, stupid, virtue signaling side issues. And meanwhile, not a whole lot getting done on that topic in Springfield. So the mayor's in some battles. He's stuck in a veritable deep cheese of a Springfield horseshoe.
I see what you did there. That was nice.
You see what I did there with the horseshoe?
Yeah. No, sometimes it seems like everyone, almost anywhere, is playing for these really pithy, hard-hitting comments back and forth, and it's just a sea of people talking past one another to each make a point, rather than working on the substance. And we counsel our clients all the time. Listen, you can go into a situation and make the most hyperbolic argument you want because you're fired up. Is that really what is going to win? Is that going to help you 5 years from now? It's a little bit like junk food. So I think if you're struggling to achieve your legislative agenda, increasing the rhetoric at the members of those you're asking for votes for is an interesting strategy.
It's almost like Springfield lawmakers think that we're running our country by social media outrage, which, of course, so far from the truth. By the way, since civilization's been extended a couple of weeks, we thought we would go ahead and do this podcast. That's maybe part of the reason why Eleni and Natalie didn't show up today. Meanwhile, back at City Hall, Christina Passiona Zayas, who is a former state lawmaker, and she's now Mayor Johnson's chief of staff, said that the CHA board will have to answer for hiring a new CEO after the administration claims there was an illegal process that violated the Illinois Open Meetings Act. Now, this all goes back to the mayor wanting to appoint former alder Walter Burnett, who was, frankly, pretty popular with a lot of developers, pretty popular in his ward, got elected over and over again until he bequeathed his seat to his son, Red Burnett. So the chief of staff, in a little saber rattling, told Fran Spielman, who loves a little saber rattling at the Sun-Times, that there will be consequences for the Chicago Housing Authority's decision to hire a new CEO whom Mayor Johnson had never met. That was an out-of-towner. Out-of-towners do really great when they get appointed to major Chicago boards like CHA or CTA. So that story is going to be something to watch, Patrick, and it will continue to devolve into acrimony and finger-pointing.
I mean, I just love when you have someone at Chicago City Hall alleging an Open Meetings Act violation or process not being followed, right? I mean, talk about like, yes, this zoning committee meeting is shared in at 8 p.m. on Friday evening. Have any members of the public come wishing to testify? See, no, okay, this is like, I mean, come on. But talk about we're not being tough on Mayor Johnson. It's just stories are what they are, and not having the best of runs here from the CHA or down in Springfield. But I just admire rank and file Democrats in the General Assembly talking about caring about Chicago's reputation as a place to do business. City Hall doubling down on its commitment to transparency and open meetings. It's a new day in Illinois. It's
a whole
day.
new world. I'm glad that civilization got extended by a couple of weeks. Now that you mention it, we have a lot to look forward
This is
to.
honestly the simulation, occurring.
Speaking of simulations, there was yet another report released late in the week, late in the afternoon of a religious holiday weekend, the Easter weekend in Chicago. 800 pages. And it was of the Chicago Police Department staffing. This is done sort of like the decennial census. It seems like we're always having this discussion. And it's always good to talk about academically until a local alder or a local community starts to realize that might mean taking police from their neighborhood that may have lower crime rate, moving it to a higher crime rate community. So Crane's Chicago Business reported that the report said that the police department should civilianize, it's a good word, civilianize, hundreds of positions to provide better supervision of their officers, putting several hundred police officers back onto the street and out of their existing desk jobs. This was done along with a companion community policing report with recommendations focused on how officers should better interact with residents during their quote-unquote proactive time, which should take up 40% of their day, according to this report. So maybe that's just as rich as the city of Chicago, Patrick, standing for openness in government.
I think I heard that summarized as put more cops on the street, and if they could be a little nicer, that would be a good plan. I also would like to send my invoice for $3 million. It's a nice short report there. But, how many mayors have looked at this? It's a constant theme. It would be, I guess we could file this report on the same one as our pensions are underfunded and as are our schools, and if they only had a little bit more there. But, I think we all know being anything associated with CPD is a tough job, tough assignment, and the commanders know their communities and their neighborhoods, and desk positions are an important allocation for folks as they work through things. So these reports are always good. I think that goal being more cops on the street would be good. How to pay for that was a bit of a challenge. And we can all be nicer to all law enforcement as they're doing their job. And maybe law enforcement will be nicer to us as well.
Yeah, what if those 600 officers that they want to put back on the street are actually like officer friendly in different districts? That would might achieve your goal.
That would be amazing. But there was only one officer friendly.
In Naperville. The Civic Committee did that study, the Commercial Club of Chicago, and they had a consulting group that only charged them $780,000 to put more cops in the street and be nicer to people. So I think that sounds really great. But now it's time for Producer Grace. Sounds terrible. This already looks terrible. So why not do a sounds terrible? Patrick, do you have something you want to lead off, or would you like me to go first?
I'm known as always being ready to go on my sounds terrible. At least waiting for the introduction on this week's episode. But to be clear, Dennis and Producer Grace have established rules. We don't do potty jokes. We don't do toilet humor.
No.
So we are not going to break those rules. So my sounds terrible is imagine being a Bloomberg industry analyst with statistics at the ready on a very sensitive topic, which is the supply of toilet paper in America. And you finally get your moment to shine. And it is when a rank and file third-party contractor set fire to a 1.2 million square foot Kimberly-Clark warehouse distribution center housing an essential amount of TP and Kleenex for the West Coast. And this is what you get when you subscribe to the legacy media. Bloomberg was able to produce the analyst that said that was 3% of the supply gone in a flush or a flash. And so we will have to keep our eyes peeled to the price of TP going forward. In Southern California, Nevada, our thoughts are with you. May you continue to enjoy the go.
And the people of the West Coast may want to, as a result, ration their use, maybe count their sheets, count their squares, because it
In these
might get a little
uncertain
rough.
times, channels are getting, shipping channels, it's a reminder to all of us. TP could always
That would be
available.
the ultimate channel to have disrupted. So speaking of running to the bathroom, my sounds terrible, Patrick, involves a debate that is really heating up, a debate that I'm going to be watching very closely, and that is the Italian beef versus the aforementioned horseshoe, which is happening in Springfield. So according to Block Club, another great community news organization, Chicago's handheld Italian beef and Springfield's open-faced horseshoe sandwich are beloved hometown delicacies. And producer Grace, I think, will show some images of these fine gourmand treats. Which one, as you look at these images and as you leave this podcast and ponder this and maybe consider weighing in with your lawmaker, which one deserves to be crowned the state's official sandwich, or as they might say on Taylor Street, the home of the Italian beef sandwich? The horseshoe, of course, has been the Springfield delicacy for quite some times. But if House Bill 4669 by Democrat State Representative Rick Ryan passes, the Italian beef would become the state sandwich. He introduced this bill on January 28th. It has now gained 7 co-sponsors and has received bipartisan support. He held a press conference in February at Pop's Beef in Mount Greenwood. And according to NBC5, there was a little trash talk at the rolling out of this state sandwich bill, with Representative Ryan saying a horseshoe is not really a sandwich. It's an open-faced thing over there, right? So Representative Ryan is coming from a position of policy, a principled position, which is you have to be able to hold the thing in order for it to be a state sandwich. So I think that's a really, like, there's a lot of important issues that we're dealing with, funding hospitals, funding schools, CTA, crime, tipped workers, working under slavery. But what we're really going to spend our time on is the state sandwich. And I think that sounds
Have the
terrible.
investigative journalists looked up whether or not Big Beef and their PACs, these special interests, have been funneling donations in Jardiniere to the officials down there? I mean, we could be uncovering a web of soft dipped bread, and we should really look into this as a
There's
follow-up.
also another loophole here in that the bear is not subject to the FCC because it streams. It's not over the air on our limited government-sanctioned bandwidth. So you're right. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of stuff in this game. And from my perspective, a beef is a sandwich. A horseshoe is just a gross thing on a plate. So, that's...
Calories don't count when it's open face. See, that's the key, is that it's open face, so the calories that's part of the solution. Is the calorie count is a little different because it's not sandwich. At least that's as it was explained.
It sounds terrible. It tastes worse. And we've just taken 21 minutes of producer Grace's time of her life that she's not going to get back talking about this on the Ultimate White Man edition of Can't Wait Sounds Terrible. And if it's terrible, if it looks terrible, if it tastes terrible, if it sounds terrible, more importantly, you've come to the right place. Can't Wait Sounds Terrible. I'm Dennis. That's Patrick. Producer Grace is hiding her face. And we'll see you next time.